10 o'clock. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. It is Titans training camp week. Players report to Ascension St. Thomas Sports Park tomorrow. Brian Callahan will open things up with an introductory press conference beginning tomorrow at 12:15. In NFL news today, the Green Bay Packers have extended Pro Bowl nose tackle Kenny Clark to a contract extension for 3 years and $64 million. Also, the Houston Texans have signed free agent running back Cam Akers, who comes off an Achilles injury suffered last season with Minnesota. This morning, Nashville Soccer Club officially announced the signing of Australian midfielder Patrick Yazbek. The 22-year-old has been playing in Norway since last year. New manager B.J. Callahan officially takes over the club today with an introductory presser coming up on Friday. And Xander Schauffele won his second major of 2024 on Sunday, going 6 under in the fourth round to win the Open Championship at Royal Troon Golf Club at 9 under. Schauffele won his first career major with the PGA Championship in May. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Good morning. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. There is football in the air. The birds are singing. The sun is out. It feels good to be back in the midst of football season once again. Tennessee Titans do not report officially until tomorrow, though we got training camp practice footage. We got Mahomes zinging 60-yard, rolling to his left, bombs to Xavier Worthy. We've got Lamar Jackson being doubted and John Harbaugh addressing it at a podium. Football, ladies and gentlemen, is officially back. We can all breathe in, breathe out, and feel whole again. It feels right. It just feels right. Jackson, Lucas, myself, we've got you until 1 o'clock, 615-737-1045, the F&M Bank chat, also at your disposal. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. How's morale?
Morale is fantastic. The pads will be popping tomorrow. Or no, not tomorrow, but Wednesday. The talkers will be talking tomorrow. The pads will be popping on Wednesday. A little bit of foreplay.
Let's ramp it up here slowly.
We're jumping the gun.
So, yes, we will have a ramp-up period before padded practices officially begin. They have joint camp to look forward to. We've got the biggest questions on offense and defense. We're going to do special teams. There are questions on special teams. I don't think the questions on special teams are irrelevant to the conversation, though they might not be as sexy, because I suppose we should be doing a training camp preview today. So let's do that. Like I said, you have the phone number throughout the course of the show. We're also going to talk a little SEC football. Chris Doering of the SEC Network will be here with us in a little bit. Landscape of the NFL right now. It's the Chiefs alone at the top, because it feels like the San Francisco 49ers, the Philadelphia Eagles on the other side of the board have been sniffing around this, but nobody can get through, at least not in the last 2 seasons. Nobody seems to be able to get past the inevitability that is Patrick Mahomes. So as we talk about all the different teams that are reporting, all the different people that are speaking, training camp narratives that we'll discuss, we've got rookie quarterbacks all over the place. Hell, I think like 4 of them are potentially on the Titans schedule this year alone. You've got camp holdouts already. Did you see Jordan Love?
We'll get to NFL headlines in a little bit.
No, I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to spoil it for you. So, where there are headlines swirling all over the place, and this stuff has really started to pick up steam because camp's already back for a handful of teams, and the Titans will be one of them as of tomorrow. Where do they stand, the local professional football team, in the landscape of the NFL right now? We've talked around it in some form or fashion. We know how fans feel about it. They feel, on the whole, disrespected. I don't want to speak for a majority, but it feels like there is a portion of the fan base that has expressed some level of discontentment with the amount of moves that they've made, because there's no question they've spent money. They have made significant moves. They have traded for quality players. They have upgraded the talent on the roster. That in turn makes the depth of the roster better because if the top-end talent is better, then your lesser players look a little better, even like guys like Treylon Burks, right? We've talked about this. Why are you so quick to want to trade away your wide receiver depth when it's been quite some time since you've had any of consequence? Where does this team stand in the landscape of the NFL actually, outside of internet narratives?
They stand at a 6.5 over-under win total per FanDuel Sportsbook.
And how many teams have a lower win total than that?
I would have to do some looking.
Way to really bring the vibes down, by the way.
You asked, bud. Don't ask questions you don't want the answer to.
No, I want the answer to it. I 6.5, has that dropped? I want to say it was like 7, wasn't it, when these things first opened up? Has that gone down? What the hell happened the last 6 months?
The Patriots are at an over-under of 4.5.
Oh, okay.
And I have yet to find one.
We need to call Giardi and check on him. 4.5
The
wins.
Panthers have an over-under win total of 5.5.
So, those are and how many teams have a projected win total of 6.5? You were looking where?
A couple others. I'm on FanDuel Sportsbook. The Broncos also have a lower over-under win total projected, or as put down by FanDuel Sportsbook, at 5.5. The Cardinals is higher at 7.5.
So, you want to know where they stand in the landscape of the NFL?
There you go.
That's where they stand in the landscape of the NFL.
The NFL is saying, okay, show us something then.
Which is how I'm slow to take reaction just off social media generally, because I feel like it can, I don't feel like it can veer to extremes very, very quickly when that might not actually be indicative of the current situation. Social media reaction is not real life, though. It feels like it's getting closer and closer every day. So if real life is 6.5 wins, and there's a portion of Titans fans out there on the internet, maybe some callers, things like that feel disrespected. But I think the vast majority of people, or at least people who are realistic about this thing, having watched the way that played out, understanding all the different changes that they've made, are also in the position of, all right, show us something. We've talked about this with all the primary components on the roster can be boiled down to some degree of, all right, show us something. Will Levis. Okay, I'm game. It was fun for a little bit last year. It was less fun than more because of everything that surrounded him, but it's fun enough. I'll buy it. I'll buy it for a year. They've clearly bought it for a year. They went in all around him, but it's, okay, show us something. Brian Callahan, first-time head coach. Promising. Reason for optimism. Plenty of veteran experience, including his father, who has been not just a NFL head coach, but also a high-level college football coach. He's been in the business for many, many years. Okay, show us something. Are you Zach Taylor or are you something else? Who are you and how will you define yourself as the leader of one of 32 NFL franchises? I'm looking forward to finding out, but I have no idea. And I think you could say the same thing of Denard Wilson, who is somebody a lot of people in the league feel very favorably about, feel like he's been kind of waiting longer than he might have had to or should have had to for his first defensive coordinator job. And we're all of the position. All right, reasons to be optimistic. Show us something.
Be a lot of different spotlights throughout the course of training camp this year. Spotlights obviously on Will Levis. Spotlight, though, is on Denard Wilson for the reasons you just stated. Spotlight will be on Devondre Sweat, on L'Jarius Sneed, on J.C. Latham.
Now, wait, who's getting ahead of yourselves on subject matter later in the show at this point?
I'm just saying it's setting up for a fascinating training camp. Damn national media storylines and what they will and won't be talking about. There are plenty of spotlights and narratives for us to talk about, littered across the roster at critical junctures of the roster.
And so I think, for our purposes, because I'm with you, damn that. I don't care about your Adam Rank schedule predictions. Has he done one yet? It's typically a sticking point. I know there are certain flashpoints on the offseason calendar that Titans fans circle and highlight and say, all right, when Adam Rank puts out our schedule prediction, we'll bury him. We'll be ready. You saw it? It's out there?
6-11.
Okay, 6.5. That's kind of where everybody's at. Look at Adam Rank taking a nuanced approach. Point being, though, there are things that are important this year, and I'm going to steal a line I remember Vrabel giving us that he stole from Ron Rivera, because all this stuff's secondhand. There are things that are important, and there are things that are interesting. The things that are important, first and foremost, you start with Will Levis. It starts and ends with Will Levis. We've spent 6 months talking about it. We've had all manner of different people with varying levels of experience across all kinds of different walks of football express it's totally different when you come in as the guy as opposed to being a rookie who might be a backup quarterback, but is at least going to be a third-string quarterback for the time being because this whole situation's weird. You've got Tannehill sitting in front of you for how long? Who knows? Apparently it's until a high ankle sprain. But even still, you can't really take control of the team because the team's not yours yet. Now, here is every opportunity in front of you to take this thing, make it yours, make it your own, and continue to grow along with it. And beyond that, prove that you can be more than just a product of the system, the way that a lot of quarterbacks are, that you're something different. Because there's reason to believe that he might be something different based on the high-level traits that he brings to the table. How he puts it together remains to be seen. And there are things that are, there are sideshow stuff, right? Because if Levis is number one most important, how much dialogue is necessary around, at least at the top of the line, about things that have been more interesting, like Tavondre Sweat and his offseason red flags, Traylon Burks, and what kind of physical shape. What do you think there's going to be a training camp like walk-in video tomorrow? You think they're going to put Traylon Burks on the video for people to dissect and pick apart like they did last time? Because it feels like we're trending that way. There are things that are important. There are things that are interesting. And we're going to try to discern between the two over the course of the next couple of weeks. Because basically, after tomorrow, we're at training camp for the next 2 months doing the show live. And we've asked for a variety of different players and people involved with the football team, and we're looking forward to bringing all of that live and in person to you. Morning show's going to be out there, too. Should be a great time. Have some company. Kirby at 4 a.m., I'm sure he'll be delightful. I'm sure he'll have already smoked a pack of cigarettes, but it's all a part of the experience. Have you made your necessary camp preparations? Have you laid out your first day of school outfits like people do?
People or you?
Me.
Because I'm just going to show up like the rest of us.
615-737-1045. 3 biggest questions on the offensive side of the football that this team must answer over the course of the next few months. We'll talk about it coming up next. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. Hey, what are you doing Saturday? You have plans?
I will be on a canoe
No.
in the country. So I will miss the open practice, but I assume that's what you are referring to.
No, that's not at all what I'm referring to. Because the show
and
is
I'm
fueled.
also very upset that I'm going to miss an awesome party for Hattie B's.
Yeah, they are having their 10th birthday bash at the Charlotte Avenue location this Saturday, July 27th. They are serving brunch for the first time at the Charlotte Avenue location, which includes the pimento cheese chicken biscuit, just the honey butter biscuits in general, the chicken and waffles, all the good stuff. They have iced coffee. They have mimosas, I believe, at that location as well.
Yeah.
Good setup, so it'll be a great time. I am going to do Titans practice in the early afternoon, and I will be at Hattie B's at Charlotte Avenue in the late afternoon. So we hope to see you all there as well.
I'll be very, very jealous.
Will you be canoeing where?
On the Buffalo.
Oh, okay.
You have to say it mysteriously like that. Gives it more mystique.
Is that how many of you are going on this buffalo
like
canoeing
12.
trip? Okay. Is that just a bunch of idiots whispering white buffalo to themselves?
Just a dozen idiots on canoes trying to stay alive.
All right, we'll come back in one piece. We have things to do. Anyway, Titans offense. What do we have to do? We have to cover training camp. We're looking forward to it. We have many things to learn about the offense. But for all intents and purposes, I think we know what this thing is going to look like in principle, yeah? What was the biggest kind of defining point of that to you? Because I think even there was still some discussion around it until one particular move that I think really laid out exactly what it was going to be. They were hinting at some stuff, and I think as early as owners' meetings in, I want to say that was mid-March, Brian Callahan being interviewed by, I want to say, Robert Mays of The Athletic, talking about Jamar Chase and Calvin Ridley. The Calvin Ridley or the Jamar Chase role is kind of how they're envisioning Calvin Ridley. So you say, all right, they may not be the same player, but they can do some of the same things. That makes sense. When they signed Tyler Boyd, I'm like, oh, it's just going to be the Bengals offense, what the Bengals offense has been, which is fine. There are clear and obvious advantages to that. The one big advantage that the Titans don't have in running that system is they don't have Joe Burrow, which is the Will Levis component of this. That is among the biggest questions that I have. I have 3. Do you have 3? How many do you have?
I have 3.
Oh, okay. Very good. For the sake of not being redundant, why don't you start? What is your biggest question about the Titans that they need to answer on offense as we proceed through training camp?
Well, based on how much this position specifically wrecked anything the Titans were trying to do on offense in 2023, my first big question is, what is J.C. Latham's floor this season, and how will that be established throughout the course of training camp?
I like the way that you phrase that, because it's not just a generic offensive line question.
Yeah, and we could talk about ceiling. And Bill Callahan and the Titans clearly believe J.C. Latham has a very high ceiling as a left tackle. But what's the floor? Because that's probably what we're going to see early on, right? He's going to start week 1
and
as a rookie.
He's going to struggle.
And he's going to have his growing pains. If all goes well with J.C. Latham, we will likely see the absolute worst of J.C. Latham's career early in his rookie year, which is okay. But what does that look like? That's my number one question going into training camp, because that's what's going to be addressed throughout the course of training camp. And early returns have been good on Latham. I mean, he's showing up. He clearly is a plus on the field, and
now,
the work ethic and leadership qualities are there, all of those things. But he hasn't put on pads, and they haven't been full speed yet.
He does. I wonder how much, because I have been very impressed with him, even though I'm not even going to remotely pretend to understand all the different things that Bill Callahan is asking him to do, though I sit over there and try and learn as much as I can, try and take away as much as I can within reason. I wonder how much more impressed I am with J.C. Latham because of the things that he's doing with Bill Callahan. Like how much that's improved the way that I view him, and how much it's just simply improved him. Like, how much better would he have been in another situation? We'll never know, because the first place that he landed is with Bill Callahan in the Titans offensive line situation. And it doesn't matter what happened with Andre Dillard or Dennis Daly or Taylor Lewan's knee or all the other House of Horror type left tackle stuff that you've had to deal with, because this highly talented, highly athletic player landed with one of the best, if not the best, offensive line coach going in the game right now. And the combination of teacher and student and how well that seems to have gone from our vantage point, right? And it's limited. We're not in the meeting rooms with them. There's a million different things that we don't have access to that matter for the purposes of this job. But there's no question that I think improves the vibe around all of it, because when's the last time we've talked about him flipping from right tackle to left? Been a little while.
It is kind of crazy how that discussion point went away as soon as they hit the practice field. I thought it was going to dominate the offseason.
It was hardly a thought.
Yeah.
Because they said, all right, left tackle, figure it out. Turns out he can't. He's pretty good.
And when Brian Callahan in that press conference after drafting Latham said, something to the effect of, and if he struggles, we'll put him out at right. We've got a need there too. I think Titans fans shivered a little bit because they thought, okay, but then you'll still need a left tackle. But that doesn't look like it's going to be the case. You feel good, even after just OTAs, and I get OTAs are what they are, but you feel good that he is the answer, for better or for worse, at left tackle, and clearly they feel confident about that.
Which I think lends itself to my biggest question that they have to answer, which is they have the answer from left tackle to center, right? It's Latham, it's Skoronski, it is Lloyd Cushenberry, who comes in as a very, I would think, a market improvement over what they had last year at center, what they've had at center since Ben Jones. Right guard, right tackle, though, that's a big old question mark.
Yep.
NPF is the biggest wild card out of any of these players.
On the offensive line.
On the offensive line. They're coming into camp with 15 as of today. Perhaps, they'll make a transaction or two, and that might look different by the time we actually open camp. But still, 15 as of today. I think Nicholas Petit-Frere is the thing that puts the biggest wrench in how I'm trying to view the rest of the offensive line. We feel like Sadiq Charles is probably, at least at the start of camp, going to get the opportunity to be the right guard. And it's been a couple of different guys, but John Owenu, the right tackle.
Ojukwu. You're talking about Ojukwu?
Yeah, I mixed him up with the Patriots player that they might have been interested in free agency.
You're talking about OJ, as they call him.
Yeah, I should probably just stick to OJ because I'm going to screw that up at some point. Either way, OJ. He was getting some snaps at right tackle last year under the previous administration. So it's clearly something that has transcended from one coaching staff to another, because before Jamarco Jones was slapping teammates and getting kicked out of practice, and Chris Hubbard, God bless him, came in and started fairly well for a couple of games before his season ended on injured reserve, OJ was getting some good snaps there. And then he got hurt in training camp, and we never actually saw how that might materialize. Actually, I think he did play the Dallas game. No, wait, that's not the Dallas game. Anyway, there was a game at the end of the season that they rested a bunch of people, and OJ played it. I need to go back and look at the snap counts. Point being, right guard, right tackle, I don't know. And we have the next couple of weeks to figure that out, which is good.
That's one of your big three questions.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Right side of the offensive line.
I mean, if we had to say, let's just go 1v1, the two front runners for both jobs right now. Right guard, you're going with Brunskill and Charles, right? Or how does Dylan Radins factor in then?
I think that Brunskill is the primary backup center.
Yeah, they don't have another one right now, so that's
no. They did not resign Corey Levin,
who can play guard, a backup center who can play guard.
Which fine, I'm totally good with that. I would so much prefer to see Brunskill as a reserve than I would as a starter.
So, do you think that right guard competition is primarily between Charles and Radins?
Yeah, I think so.
With Charles probably the favorite.
Yeah, because Brunskill can play there. He played there all last year. Understanding it's a different system, different coach, different coaching points, different techniques and stuff like that. For all intents and purposes, that Daniel Brunskill can play right guard. He's played it for the Niners. He's played it for the Titans. He understands it.
And is there anybody who could factor into the right tackle competition outside of Petit-Frere, John Ojukwu, and Jalen Duncan?
No, they traded for Leroy Watson.
That's right.
They traded for Leroy Watson, your boy, with the Cleveland Browns. Jerron Christian was also a free agent signing alongside Cushenberry and Sadiq Charles. So the offensive line turnover has been substantial. They have a lot of different bodies that they can throw at it. We may be having a completely different conversation 2 weeks from now when we've seen a couple of padded practices and they have had the opportunity to feel things out even more. 615-737-1045. What is the biggest question for you as a Titans fan that you need to see your team answer on offense as we work through training camp? We'll get to the rest of the ones that Lucas and I have. We'll mix your phone calls in as we go. Chuck is up first.
Hey, Buck.
Hey.
I guess my question to you and Lucas is, having bringing Latham in as a rookie, does that give him a leg up being with Callahan instead of that being maybe 2 or 3 years with somebody else? them trying to retrain him. I think having him coming in as a rookie with Callahan gives him a huge advantage on getting to his ceiling from his floor.
Which may be so. I mean, this is the situation that he landed in, so it's tough to answer a hypothetical. But what I'll say is, at any position in football, but most specifically quarterback and offensive line, the coaches will bury you with, they just need to play together, right? They just need consistency. They just need the reps. And to kind of, you've heard Skoronski talk about it, right? Because what did they do? They put him at left guard. They left him at left guard. They fought off any attempts from media or fans to push the question of left tackle. They said, no, he's going to learn left guard. That's enough. And that'll be what he does. And he was not great, but we understand mitigating circumstances that led him to be less than as a rookie offensive lineman dealing with injury on a bad offensive line.
Robert, not our Robert, but a Robert O in the F&M Bank chat says, with a nickname like Trench King, we expect big things. And Tom asks, are there any linemen that are out to start training camp?
I don't know that NPF is going to be ready to go.
That's the big question, health-wise.
Right. That is the only thing that's on my radar at the start, that there's nothing definitive about him as of today. Perhaps, we'll get to the podium tomorrow. We'll ask Brian Callahan the question. He'll say Nick's ready to go, and that'll be that. So, but as of today, Nick Petit-Frere, question mark.
So if he could be there first day, ready to go, but if he's not, if he is out for the early portion of the training camp, then that job really is wide open.
Buddy, I think it's wide open now.
Sure, but I think NPF is the first name that pops into most people's heads when they're thinking about that position battle. But if he's going to be plagued by injury in camp, which we don't know if that's the case, then that job truly is wide open. I mean, it's hard to look and make a distinct favorite between John Ojukwu and Jalen Duncan.
I think that fans, you're right, because he started, what did he start, 16 games as a rookie?
He is by far the most experience there of anybody competing for that job.
Yes, you have guys who have taken NFL snaps. Jerron Christian did play a fair amount of football for the Browns last year because they dealt with a lot of injuries. But yes, you are talking about a player who can play right tackle, and you just really didn't get it. I almost want to give him a pass for last year because the gambling suspension cost him the first 4. You get dropped in there right when Andre Dillard's getting benched, right? That's in London, that whole situation, because that was the first time we saw Nick Petit-Frere back from the gambling suspension. And then, what was it, the bye, and 2 games later that he got hurt in Pittsburgh on Thursday night, shoulder injury, he's done for the year. So it's tough to get a real read on what he was able to contribute last year because there just wasn't many opportunities. Second biggest question, Levis, right? Of the offensive line discussion that we're having, offensive line matters. Quarterback matters most. I still think that the offensive line situation has to be answered first before you can really get a good gauge on the quarterback, because I want him to have a fighting chance, which is what I said I felt like a million times about Mariota, and then it got, 3, 4, almost 5 years down the line, and you're like, okay, maybe enough of the chances. But I want to see him have a real opportunity behind a just league average offensive line. Just God be league average. It's what every Titans fan should be saying. Just be league average.
So if he's going to have an opportunity is a question the offensive line needs to answer. What he does with that opportunity, like what questions do you want to see answered from Levis during training camp, during joint practices?
I want to see him start fast, because the knock on Titans and offense and all of it under one of the biggest ones under Mike Vrabel is, all right, well, it takes him a while to ramp up, and then you kind of start to lull yourself into that mode. But if he's turning the ball over a lot, and we're talking about like, all right, it's no longer the offseason, it's no longer OTAs and mandatory minicamp. Like, now let's buckle down. Let's see it. Let's see you take command of this thing. Let's see you understand your progressions. Let's see you handle it without looking just so damn tense all the time. And he's an intense person, right? So I don't want to completely body language diagnose him or something like that. But he has to have command, he has to have flow, he has to have rhythm, and he has to protect the football. And I think training camp provides you that first real opportunity to see that beyond just, all right, now's the time to make mistakes. Let's try some stuff.
Yeah, people go opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to interceptions at camp, right? It's either, it's camp, you're going to try things, who cares? The picks don't matter. Or it's panic every time he throws a ball over the middle and it gets tipped up and picked off. tipped up and picked off.
Context for the interceptions will matter.
It's in the middle somewhere, right? Yes.
But the other component of this is, which is why I'm excited that Cosell is going to be here for at least the joint camp work, because trying to understand the context for the interception requires us to have a depth of knowledge about the play call on the offense and the defense that may have caused the interception to happen, right? Because there's a lot of different moving parts, and we see a play, all of a sudden it's picked off. Are you blaming the quarterback? You're probably blaming the quarterback because you're just box score scouting when you see a tweet at the end of practice. So context matters. With the interceptions, still, last year was my, all right, mess around, find out. Go ahead, bud. Like, you're not going to be the starter. Right now, you're not even the backup. Let's just see what you've got to work with and go from there. Now becomes the more serious opportunity. Now he should be able to be more comfortable in that situation. What's your second one?
Second one, and Dixie in the F&M Bank chat basically asks a version of my question. He asks...
That is such a favorite of yours.
I know. And we have a history, I guess.
Close personal attention.
Dixie asks... or says, I wonder who the camp superstar is going to be this season.
Oh, God.
That leads into my question of where does the unexpected roster decision come on offense? Right? Because last year, what was it? Do you remember?
Julius Chestnut.
On the initial 53.
I do,
It caught us all off guard. Maybe there isn't one, but what would constitute an unexpected roster decision? Would it come at wide receiver, where somebody is going to be on the outside looking in? Would it be Malik Willis making the 53? Would that be considered a surprise?
That's mine. It would be. So just, based on my general understanding right now, I think their preference would be to keep him on the initial roster instead of risking the idea of, all right, we cut him, we can sneak him through on waivers without having a plan there in place, right? Because Chestnut ended up on the practice squad at various points. It's just that first initial, it's not a final roster, it's an initial roster, so they can deploy whatever tricks that they need to, or try and deploy whatever tricks that they feel like they need to sneak a player through, and then maybe later on down the road, because there's still some practices, there's still some time between the end of training camp, final roster cuts, and the actual first game. They can still manipulate that to an extent. I think Malik would surprise fans. I might be less surprised before training camp starts. We'll see what happens with him. But I think they might try and keep him on the initial 53.
But in terms of position battles that could take place and somebody having a big camp, a big preseason, to end up boxing somebody out of the initial 53, what position do you look to where that could happen? Like, I think running back is very much one of those. Like, if Julius Chestnut has a big preseason, a big training camp, or Dylan Johnson, the signing out of Washington, Pollard and Spears are on this roster, but Hassan Haskins is still around. And suddenly, Haskins is dueling it out with Chestnut, Dylan Johnson, and Jabari Small, the UDFA out of Tennessee, for that third running back spot. And running back seems to be a position that flashes in preseason games. It's certainly with Chestnut. And that got him a roster spot last
that's
year.
who's getting the bulk of the reps, right?
Exactly.
It's the third and fourth running backs and things like that. It's the Caleb Murphys of the world, who Rashad Weaver in his rookie season before. Did he break his leg his rookie year?
Yeah, he had a really good start to the preseason. He had like 2 sacks or something in that Falcons
he flashed,
game.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the moment of, so it just takes that preseason game moment, because the vast majority of people won't see these guys until the preseason. You and I and Wyatt and Tehran and Teresa and Teresa's doing Olympics, but for the most part, we're going to see different ins and outs of this every day before a preseason game ever takes place. And then the preseason games will completely change the public narrative about whatever players we've been talking about. Chosen on YouTube says, has Haskins even been seen at any of the practices? Yeah, Hassan Haskins has been out there for a little bit, but some of those guys, because I personally did not spend a ton of time with the off-ball linebackers. Kenneth Murray did not spend a lot of time out there practicing, and that, I think, flew under the radar as a part of the discussion for a player that we know is going to be expected to start, not compete, but he has to come in and play right away. All right. Biggest questions on the defense we'll get to later. Will Levis had some commentary about taking the Titans from worst to first. We'll read you those quotes coming up next. Welcome back to the show. Fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. Like I said, don't forget their 10th anniversary celebration at the Charlotte Avenue spot is this Saturday. Check them out for brunch. They'll also have great cocktails and beverages into the evening. Download the mobile delivery app. In fact, I had Hattie B's yesterday. Picked it up from the Melrose location. Always a great time. Will Levis had some comments. Now, I was trying to figure out where the hell somebody got to him. Where was the Titans quarterback speaking ahead of training camp, the week before training camp, on taking the Titans from worst to first? So apparently he had some kind of Noble event, Noble, Nobull. It's the athleisure wear company. They sponsor the Combine here in the last couple of years. He's been a spokesman for him, I think, since before he was drafted. But anyway, he caught up with Outkick, an outlet that was able to get a couple of quotes from him talking about raising expectations and raising the Titans from worst to first. He said, and this is courtesy of Outkick.com, the writer, Armando Salguero. Okay, apparently caught up with him. Yeah, I mean, that's our goal, Levis said. It's crazy to think how our division has gone from a second thought in the league to one of the most competitive, exciting young divisions. We know what it's going to take because of that now. The NFL is the NFL because anyone can win on any day, and we understand that. As much as people like to believe we're not going to be worth anything this year, we're going out there, not necessarily to prove them wrong, but to prove ourselves right and show people what we're about. So, that is Levis speaking on the idea of taking the Titans in 2024 from their last place finish the previous season to first place or something closer, playoffs, wild card, whatever that looks like, more competitive than last place in 2024. Here's the question that I want to pose to the audience and to the room. Is there a scenario where Will Levis and the Tennessee Titans finish fourth place again this year, but we are having a conversation like, okay, that's okay. Is this division capable, in other words, of being last year's AFC North, where the Bengals are in it until the very, very end, where 3 of the 4 make the postseason, where the Cincinnati loses their starting quarterback and still has a winning season because they're well coached? And it's not like, I mean, did anybody come away with the feeling, that the Bengals are finished because they went 9-8 last year? Now, again, Joe Burrow didn't play. Jake Browning had to fill in.
And kept their head above the water.
Sure. But is there any scenario where Titans fans see a 9-8, 8-9 finish? It's last place because the AFC South is very competitive this year, and all 3, you could make a case that all 4 of them could take a legitimate step, but still not finish better than 4th.
F&M Big Chat is saying no. Chef Rand says 4th means Levis will be replaced. I see that scenario because there are a million other things that you could be talking about here. Injuries could play a part of it. The defense feels like it could go a million different directions this year. But in terms of Levis having a good season where there is growth and the rest of the division is just that much better, because if you took out that part and you said, is there a scenario where the Titans go 9-8 and you feel okay about where Will Levis is at the end of the year?
And just not include the fourth place finish?
Division part? Most people would say yes. 9-8, you are fighting for a playoff spot at the end of the season. And you're in the picture. You're in the graphic, right?
In the hunt.
But then you add in that layer of 4th in the division, and that sours people on it, which is fine. But I could see a scenario where the other 3 teams, the Texans kind of stay up, and the Colts, if Richardson can stay healthy, and the Jaguars take a notable step forward, absolutely there could be that scenario.
Because you're right, at least on our comments online, you can live stream the show, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. If you're hanging out on YouTube, make sure you leave us a like. We would be grateful to you. Chef Rand, Jael, Garrett Whitley, all espousing some level of no. There's no scenario in which the Titans finish with finish in 4th place, but you as a fan base feel good about it. I think that's a very real situation. It's more realistic to me that happens than they go from worst to first this year. I want to make sure that that I keep the same energy. Because I do think that this is a make or break season for Levis. And I don't want to get caught in this space where you come away at the end of the year and be like, I kind of think I know about Will Levis, but I'm not 100% sold, sure, whatever. I don't want that. Being Mariota is not a good thing here. But if he wins 9 games, if he is the starting quarterback for a 9-8 season, that is an improvement of 6 wins upon his last sample size. That would be pretty damn good. He can take a meaningful step. He can be a significantly better quarterback. The Titans can be a much better team with Will Levis as quarterback, but still, because the division is hugely competitive. Now, that would then expect the Ravens were the number 1 overall seed. So in this scenario, I guess the Texans would be the number 1 overall seed, and 3 of the 4 would make the postseason, the way that the AFC North did last year with the Bengals finishing in 4th place, but at 9-8. I think it's a very real scenario that people throw out as soon as you mention 4th place. But other than the AFC North doing it again, I think this division has as good a case to be for all 4 of them to be right in that same area with how much harder the Texans' schedule has gotten and how promising the other 3 teams look, even if you're kind of down on the Jags.
If the Titans do go around 500 and we're finishing the year not worried about the offense, then probably means there were some pretty big questions about the defense along the way.
Which, by the way, right? I mean, we had that conversation all week. People have spent the vast majority of the offseason, I feel like, thinking they're going to run a completely different defense than they're probably going to run based on how Denard Wilson is kind of talking. So I think there's a lot of just shoulder shrug, I don't know, stuff about this football team.
As in people think the Ravens defense is just coming over to Nashville? Is that what you're saying?
Just going to bring a version of the Ravens defense. Although, again, there will be some components. But to say that Denard Wilson, former Ravens defensive backs coach, is just going to run the Ravens defense here in Tennessee ignores what? He was only in Baltimore for a year.
Yeah, he's going to run his defense in Tennessee. Yeah. And we haven't seen a sample size of what that looks like with him as the play caller.
Based on personnel. So I think that is kind of where I'm at with it. But I understand why Titans fans would have a knee-jerk reaction to it. I just think that you have to have some level of patience. Even as I am saying, make or break year for the quarterback, there does still have to be some level of patience to this thing because it's entirely possible they struggle out the gate and then have basically the entire division, save that one Colts game at home, in front of them for the, weeks 12 through 18 when they have that stretch of ridiculous, of just super concentrated AFC South games, 5 of the 6. 615-737-1045 is how you join the conversation. Do we have actual new news?
We sure do. A couple NFL teams have already hit the field for training camp, and the rest of the league pretty much does this week, including the Titans. We have news.
Headlines are next.
10:59. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. It is Titans training camp week. Players report to Ascension St. Thomas Sports Park tomorrow. Brian Callahan will open things up with an introductory presser tomorrow at 12:15. In NFL news today, the Packers have extended Pro Bowl nose tackle Kenny Clark to a contract extension for 3 years and $64 million. Also, the Houston Texans add to the running back room, signing free agent running back Cam Akers, who suffered an Achilles injury last year with Minnesota. This morning, Nashville Soccer Club officially announced the signing of Australian midfielder Patrick Yazbek. The 22-year-old has been playing in Norway since last year. New manager BJ Callahan officially takes over the club today. He has an introductory presser coming up on Friday. And Xander Schauffele won his second major of 2024 on Sunday, went 6 under in the fourth round to win the Open Championship at Royal Troon Golf Club at 9 under. Schauffele won his first career major with the PGA Championship in May. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Second hour is upon us. NFL is underway. We've got teams all over the board opening training camp already. The Titans will open training camp tomorrow. We will be down there for press conferences. I will be down there for press conferences. You will hear from Brian Callahan, Rand Carthon, and Assistant General Manager Anthony Robinson will also be made available for questions too. Then very soon thereafter that, on Wednesday, training camp practices officially begin. In the morning, we will have morning coverage for you. You can keep tabs on that on social media. Then Lucas and I are going to sit down, talk about what we saw, do great interviews, have a great time, keep you up to date with the latest. But since we have yet to have Titans camp officially open, we have to look elsewhere around the league for headlines.
It's time for training camp headlines with Lucas Panzica.
The Green Bay Packers are making headlines as they are officially on the practice field for training camp 2024. Now, the Packers did extend Pro Bowl nose tackle Kenny Clark to a 3-year extension worth $64 million. Clark coming off a career year, an elite run stopper who had a career-high 7.5 sacks last year. But that is not why people are talking about the Green Bay Packers today. Quarterback Jordan Love and the franchise might be nearing an agreement on a contract extension, but until it is done, according to ESPN, Love will not participate in practice or games this season. Packers GM Brian Gutekunst said Monday, right before the team's first practice today, that Love's reps informed him Saturday night of their plans before a deal gets done. He said, quote, "We completely understand where he's coming from, and there are pictures of Jordan Love standing in a T-shirt and shorts at Packers practice."
So a holdout, but a hold in.
A hold in.
Didn't Jeff have a hold in? Somebody had a hold in.
I think it was Jeff.
That sounds about right. So, yeah, hold ins are acceptable. We'll count it. Controversy? Please, God, let a Cowboys player hold in.
The fact that he's there and around tells you they're probably close, right?
So this is the quote on how close a deal is to being done, courtesy of, Brian Gutekunst?
Yes, the GM.
Very scary last name. Yeah, I think so. But again, you never know. We're working really hard to get that done. I think it's really important for us. At the same time, the thing that I have confidence in is that we both want the same thing. We want Jordan here for a long time, give him that stability for him, and it gives us some stability for our group as well. I'm optimistic. These are big deals. It takes time. They're not as easy as some people may think. I feel we're close, but no real timetables as far as how long it's going to take. That is the Packers general manager early this morning. What is Jordan Love a better case for? Because I feel like people are going to cite, it's like they did with Aaron Rodgers. He needed to sit a little bit before he turned into a good NFL quarterback. Where I watched that dude last year, and I just came away thinking, he just needed to play. He needed to play to be able to get reps, get comfortable, get flow, get rhythm, get chemistry, all these different things. And I just don't think he's like a good case for, let some quarterbacks sit and develop and grow behind whatever veteran starter you might have in place. I feel like Aaron Rodgers directly inhibited Jordan Love's growth. I think we could have seen this much sooner than like the back half of last season.
And if we do see what we saw the back half of last season, the Green Bay Packers are a Super Bowl contender.
You better cash in.
In 2024. Yes,
absolutely.
That probably is going to happen either way. Speaking of quarterbacks and Aaron Rodgers, Jets QB Aaron Rodgers spoke on his minicamp absence this week on the popular Barstool Sports podcast, Pardon My Take. Here was the audio. Should I start my Aaron Rodgers impression?
Not the audio of my keyboard clacking.
Click, clack, click, clack, click.
Like, I mean, he talks a lot about the younger drafts and going back, 10,800 years, I believe it is. And to me, it seems more in line. It's ancient. It's an interesting country. I mean, I wouldn't maybe recommend people going there in the summertime. It's like 120 in Aswan, but
They also might have OTAs.
Yeah,
But
you could get
those.
excused for that.
yeah.
I don't know,
Some people could, yeah, I'm sure.
Was that a problem? Was that a problem?
With what?
Was it a problem that it was inexcused?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure I'll get fined for that. But
Yeah.
the thing that I think people don't understand is that when I was in the NFC North and playing for that team years ago, there used to be a real thing called minicamp, where it was you had one of them usually. Sometimes it was right after the draft, but either way, it was 5 practices in 3 days: Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So 2 practices on Friday, 2 on Saturday, 1 on Sunday. And now it's not minicamp. They can arbitrarily put a tag on whatever week of OTAs they want to say this is the mini camp week, which makes it somehow more mandatory than the other weeks. But it was an OTA schedule. That's how how words can be a little deceiving from time to time. You can make a story out of the fact that I missed a mini camp when it was really 2 OTA days.
Right.
Interesting.
I came to the first 10.
So this is a media thing.
And you would never change the meaning of a word or deliberately tell people
No,
one
of course
thing.
not.
Right.
No.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I have your back.
That was very good by Big Cat at the end there. Very tongue-in-cheek. You would never change the meaning of a word.
He is just so unlikable. Damn. I mean, it's like sometimes you got to remind me about my tone. You know, I don't mean to come off as bad as I do sometimes, but every once in a while there should be tone fines, right? Aaron Rodgers needs a tone fine. I mean, it is. Well, these things are arbitrary, and he's right.
Yeah, and if he's healthy and good, nobody cares. We are not talking about this if the Jets are coming into Nissan Stadium week 2 after a week 1 win and looking fantastic.
Sure, but that's almost not my point here. It's the fact that he's just like, oh, I'm sure I'll get fined. Oh, they can arbitrarily say whatever he's got an entire team to lead. And while I agree with his assessment, I would not, even though he is running the organization, so who's there to check him? I would not, as somebody who employs Aaron Rodgers, appreciate the idea of my rules being arbitrary as your employer. Now, am I going to side with management over labor? Very, very rarely in many instances, because I do think Aaron Rodgers is the most powerful player in football. We've talked about this before. So he can do as he can clearly.
Probably not particularly close.
Do as he pleases right now. So far be it from me to say the one guy that gets to do it shouldn't get to do it. But I think if I'm running a team and he is the leader of my team, that I would not appreciate that outwardly being espoused and and at least not infecting, but being projected to a lot of young, impressionable players that you're going to have to deal with for a long, long time beyond Aaron Rodgers. Because they're not all going to be in Aaron Rodgers. But some of them might get the idea, oh, if Aaron can do it, I can do it. When Aaron is so much better at what he does than what you might do, unless you're like Garrett Wilson, who's excellent.
Get back to the AFC South here. The Houston Texans have signed.
Aaron Rodgers headlines.
Yeah.
We are so back.
Oh, they don't stop.
So back.
The Texans have signed free agent running back Cam Akers, who suffered a torn Achilles in week 9 with the Minnesota Vikings last season. It's the second Achilles tear of his career. He tore the Achilles in his left leg, lower leg, whatever you want to call it, earlier in his career. He's only 25 years old. And he's going into the 5th year of his career. Last season, he played in 7 games, had 60 carries for 167 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 70 receiving yards when he was dealt to Minnesota. So the Texans add to a running back room that already includes Joe Mixon.
Who haven't the Texans signed this offseason? I mean, it's just crazy.
Me.
The level of talent acquisition. What, are you looking for some of that Texans money too? You sniffing around?
If they're giving it out.
They do seem to be.
But is this anything notable? Cam Akers continuing on.
It's their Jamal Adams signing.
Yeah, he hasn't had a productive season since 2022, where he played in 15 games, had 786 rush yards, 9 rushing touchdowns. But since then, it's been a litany of injuries. Really, the injury started in 21 when he had that first Achilles.
Was that season his Rams? His
22 with the Rams.
22 with because I remember him being in McVay's doghouse a couple of times because the dude could not pass protect. He was a liability.
No, for sure. And Darrell Henderson has stepped in a lot during those days, but he was dealt to Minnesota last year, made it until week 9 in Minnesota. Was not the first choice running back in Minnesota either.
If you are dismissing the Cam Akers signing because he went to the Texans, but celebrating the Jamal Adams signing because you're a Titans fan, I would say you're doing the Spider-Man meme right now. That's what those two signings
I guess
represent.
so, but you can be a little more versatile and creative in how you use Jamal Adams as opposed to a running back, right? Like, you can do more.
Safety linebacker that is neither a safety and wasn't a very good linebacker last year. So, I don't know.
That's
you can make that case if you want to.
But
I would like to wait and see.
You're not signing, we don't think you're signing Jamal Adams to be Jamal Adams of 2017, right? You're signing Jamal Adams to be something new in this defense that we haven't seen yet.
Something new? No, something that you know that he can do, which is probably something that's on tape somewhere. I just think that they are closer to being the same kind of thing than, Titans fans.
It is a name. It is certainly a name. Cam Akers, who was great at Florida State before coming out to L.A. Outside linebacker Shaq Barrett is retiring at the age of 31.
I did see that.
Two-time Super Bowl champ with Denver and, of course, with Tampa Bay and Tom Brady. He signed a one-year deal with the Dolphins back in March, and he is calling it a career, and a very successful career at that. Barry Jackson, who covers the Dolphins for the Miami Herald, has tweeted that in the wake of Shaq Barrett's retirement, Dolphins are auditioning multiple edge players today. Besides Emmanuel Ogbah, Yannick Ngakoue will be at Dolphins headquarters on Monday, according to his agent Drew Rosenhaus. And I only bring that up because we've talked about the idea of the Titans potentially making a veteran ad at edge rusher, and
they've been pretty quiet about it, though.
Yeah, we haven't seen anything to indicate the Titans are in that market. The Dolphins very clearly are, with Barrett taking a step back.
That could change in a matter of an afternoon because Jamal Adams was on nobody's radar, and then they had him in for a visit. Said, why not? He's healthy. He passed the physical. Let's try it. Based on the money, because it seemed like they were very quickly able to just agree, hey, but, vet minimum, we'll try this out. Low risk, low reward type of thing. You're going to be competing with various teams for edge help if you're interested, but the thing that they continue to have, at least most pressing, how much attention they've given to the edge market versus the safety market, the thing that they continue to try and work through is the safety market right now. So I would anticipate the former before the latter.
And then finally, Giants quarterback Daniel Jones says he is ready to go after recovering from ACL surgery that took place last November. He was not cleared for spring offseason workouts with the Giants, but says he is good to go for the start of Giants training camp.
Are the Giants excited about that?
I have no idea. Who's their backup? We talked about this. Dude, is it
No, he's in New York now.
Terron is a Jet.
He's the Jets' backup quarterback. I just imagine Daniel Jones getting at a podium saying, "Yeah, good to go, guys," and everybody in the Giants organization just be like, "Oh."
It's DeVito, isn't it?
It's not. Well, Tommy's still there, but
don't
he's
make
definitely
me live
not,
that life again.
He's not the first choice. Oh, it's Drew Lock.
That agent is still grifting off that brief moment in the sun that Tommy DeVito provided them. Wasn't he on 3HL at the Super Bowl?
He was. He had his 15 minutes of fame.
It's the longest 15 minutes of fame in the history of 15 minutes of fame.
Yeah, Drew Lock signed with the Giants, one-year deal worth $5 million back in March.
Okay, very good. Do you remember that whole? It was not a scandal, but it was a funny moment when the draft was in town that they had running a chyron downtown near the draft stage when the draft was in Nashville, and it had Drew Lock going to the Titans at 19.
That was a thing for like 5 minutes.
It sure was.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Titans legend, Drew Lock. 3 biggest questions about the Titans that they need to answer in training camp, this time on the defensive side of the ball. We'll take a look at that coming up next. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. 615-737-1045 is the number. If you want to jump in, we'd be happy to have you. We'll get to the three biggest questions we have on defense here in just a little bit. Lucas is too busy being celebrated as a local celebrity in the F&M Bank chat to pay attention to anything that's going on the radio show. What, are you out meeting and greeting the public this weekend? What happened?
You are the worst. There's one nice
because
person.
You hit me with this crap all the time.
One nice I didn't even say anything. What you bring it into the spotlight. That's
right.
why I hit you with it.
Yeah, it's rare that I get to expose somebody else more than I get exposed.
One person by the name of Corbin walked up to us when we were at a certain local establishment on Saturday and said hello. You were off chit-chatting with somebody else. I was with Bert and Grace and Cheyenne, and Corbin walked up. He was very kind, said he likes the show, talked about the soccer broadcast, and it was great to meet him, and he's in the chat saying hello. So, yeah, Bug.
Do you enjoy being in the presence of local public figure Lucas Panzica Jackson? Is that all? Yeah. Is it a fine now? Oh, my God.
I didn't bring
Lucas.
anything up. You brought this up. You brought this to the forefront. You just want so badly
what
for
a burden
me.
Celebrity
You want
must
so
be.
badly to drag me down into the unrelatable, out of the touch muck.
Come on in, baby.
that you're
The water's
in.
fine.
I won't do it.
How long until he gets in trouble? I feel like that's the step after a celebrity.
Well, now, because once we get him famous enough, then I'm gonna undermine him to Scoop Nashville. We're gonna get his mugshot put up somewhere. It'll be a great time. That's how I will extract my revenge.
You have to have me have a mugshot first. You're just gonna take one and then say it's a mugshot?
No, I'm going to put you in a position to get arrested and then put on Scoop is what I'm going to do. I'm going to frame you for something. 615-737-1045. Ron Slay in the chat saying, wish I could have been there, but everybody wants to fall asleep on their birthday. He didn't text me until damn near 1 a.m. He goes straight to hell. Slay going to meet us out.
You get a WYA from Slay at 1 a.m.?
Texted me, texted Bert, where you at like 1 in the morning after he told us he was going to be there at 10. Don't put that on me, Ricky Bobby.
Damn.
Not on me.
I didn't get a text, Slay.
Eat it. Biggest questions about the Titans on defense. It starts and ends for me with what kind of defense are they going to run? I keep feeling like it's my initial preconceived notions about the defense were simply that. Nothing more than preconceived notions versus what Denard Wilson is actually going to execute, how much he's going to take not just from the Baltimore Ravens, his most recent stop, but the man has been in the NFL coaching for 12 years. He has been a defensive backs coach for 9, and a good portion of that career was spent with both the Rams and the Jets, featuring Greg Williams and Todd Bowles, and those are two very hyper-aggressive, hyper-pressure defensive type of coaches that I think Denard Wilson might be more in the mold of. So, starts and ends with what is the scheme, and how does Denard Wilson distinguish himself from his, we won't call them mentors necessarily, but from his previous bosses, and how he puts his own spin on his defense.
How soon until you think we have at least an idea of that?
October. I mean, I don't know, maybe Seahawks camp. Like, we'll see some pressure, because, like, what was Brian Flores doing to the Titans offensive line?
Oh, my goodness.
He's sending the house.
Yeah. Everybody. Water boy. Get back, coach.
Water boy.
Everybody's just running after Ryan Tannehill.
Which is, by the way, what they do. That's what Brian Flores does as a defensive coordinator. He blitzes the holy hell out of quarterbacks. I think Minnesota had the highest. I need to double check my numbers on this, because I know Ravens were pretty low. But if I'm not mistaken, Minnesota had the highest blitz percentage of any defense last year.
I'll look it up. They may have been second to somebody, surprisingly. Maybe like the Giants or something. Or Wink Martindale's not there anymore. Or was Wink the DC last year, or was he outed before last year?
Yeah, I think the coup came afterwards. So,
but
yes.
yeah, that's a good question.
No, what is that? That's what I'm going to do to Lucas.
Context for
That's what I'm going to do to Lucas when I get him framed for Scoop Nashville. Just biding my time, lurking in the shadows.
All right, biggest question for me on defense is, how consistent is T'Vondre Sweat going to be? We have the expectation that he will be there.
He's going to be
right?
there.
He's going to be there.
He's
Brian
going to be
Callahan
there.
has said that.
So
Jeffrey
help
Simmons
me
has
God
said
if
that.
he's not out there on Wednesday.
Yes. We won't know until we know, but we have the expectation he will at least be present. How consistent will it be? right? How much of an every down player will T'Vondre Sweat be, even at practice?
Yeah.
In 11-on-11s, in joint practices. We're all going to have our eye on T'Vondre Sweat. He's a rookie, but does anybody have a bigger spotlight on them in training camp than Sweat? Not Snead?
Levis.
No, I'm sorry. On the defensive
On the
side.
defense.
Between Sweat or Snead, who's paying more attention?
Well, Sweat, for sure, because Snead is a two-time defending Super Bowl champion.
Yeah.
He is a high-level player. His availability, we knew coming in at practice, was going to be limited prior to him, even we knew there was going to be a management level type of situation, right? So I fully expect that to continue through training camp. I don't think that's going to look much different than it did in the offseason program. I have yet to see Sweat. Like, I've at least seen Snead at a walkthrough. I have yet to physically see Sweat other than a press conference.
Snead, you just need to see out there, right? And once you see him out there, it's kind of like in your head. That's sort of been addressed.
Yeah, let him play some defense on Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf when they come to town, and I'll be fine. I don't need to see him the rest of the time.
When we see Sweat out there, what he does when he is out there is really important.
And how much he's out there, because he needs, for this defense to be, I think, even league average, he needs to be a three-down player.
100%. I agree.
He needs to be not Danico Autry in role, but Danico Autry in snap count.
And somebody's going to need to emerge around Jeffrey Simmons, Sebastian Joseph Day,
anybody,
and T'Vondre Sweat, right? A Keandre Coburn, a Marlon Davidson has to emerge in some way on the defensive line. But yeah, no question, all eyes will be on Sweat.
Yes. From that, because T'Vondre Sweat would be absolutely my second one, I went back and forth on this, but it's probably safety, right? Because the only thing that's been left out here that they continue to pursue, or at least most actively, we'll say, is safety help. The only solution provided yet is Jamal Adams, and that's not a solution. That's a situational type deal that they've done. It's a veteran minimum deal, essentially, that they've done. It's a deal that comes with almost no expectation beyond he's a famous player. He used to be good at football. The question is, can he continue to be good in a role for this team? Safety help. To see Eddie Jackson go to the Ravens on a one-year deal, I don't think I've seen the money, and it's probably been out there since the last time I saw the reporting on that. I think that was a couple of days ago.
That happened Friday afternoon.
Yeah, so the money is probably out there by now. But Eddie Jackson going to the Ravens as like their third safety, I was disappointed to see that. I never really heard any real conversations around Eddie Jackson and the Titans. But again, the money matters here, and they have not quite drawn a hard line in the sand about how much money they're willing to pay for safety, but it's clear that the money is, they have limits despite there being plus cap space.
Yeah, I haven't seen any financials on Jackson to Baltimore.
Which, again, is probably not good if you're the player or the representation, because if you did a good deal, you'd want to get out there with it immediately.
Yeah, that info is not available to Spot Track yet either.
What beyond? So if we've gone defensive scheme, T'Vondre Sweat, and safety, what's left on the board?
Edge rusher. Because if they're not going to address it and bring in a veteran ad, which you said you've heard nothing about, then beyond Harold Landry and Rashad Weaver and Arden Key, are we talking about any of those depth edge rushers throughout the course of training camp? Are we talking about Caleb Murphy, the UDFA, who flashed a little bit in the preseason last year out of Ferris State? Are we talking at all about Jalen Harrell, the 7th-round pick out of Michigan? And does somebody need to emerge from that group of names for this edge rushing core to be able to lift this defense in a way that, I won't say it's the most vulnerable spot on the defense. We haven't even mentioned middle linebacker.
That's next.
But who emerges outside of that trio? And is Weaver going to do enough for you this year as a depth edge rusher beyond your top two?
We talked to him it was either OTAs or mandatory minicamp. I did the sit down with him, and he's definitely, he has worked. I have no question that he's worked hard to try and physically change his body to make himself more explosive, because he was never an overwhelmingly explosive player at Pitt. He was a productive player at Pitt. He was a versatile player, for that defense. He played, edge inside. He's somebody, he's got good length. But the burst required to be an impact player is something that he has continued to try and work on, but to date has lacked. That, and he can't set the edge. Or he hasn't been able to set the edge. That's also a knock on Arden, right? Arden is a 3-down player by default because they don't have anybody else really to push him unless it's Weaver, right? Who would be pushing Arden Key into more of a situational role, which we've talked about. Hell, we talked about it with Brian Callahan. They're looking for Arden Key to take meaningful steps as a player, even though he's more veteran in his career. I'll go off ball if you're going edge.
Yeah.
Kenneth Murray did not practice. I'm trying to think if I saw him out there. Again, I don't want to say that he wasn't out there at all just because I wasn't by the off-ball linebackers, but I saw very, very little, if any, of Kenneth Murray during the offseason program.
We didn't talk much at all about Murray since they signed him.
Right. Other than it's been assumed that they're going to find somebody to put him next to, and they're going to let him run a little more looser with a little less thinking than perhaps his previous stop required of him, and that they think will be to his benefit.
They're going to let him go hunt. Those are the words of Rand Carthon on this radio station.
So, Kenneth Murray and in base defense, Jack Gibbons, because that's my expectation at the start of camp. Cedric Gray has tools. Cedric Gray has been a 3-year starter at North Carolina. Lauren Walsh of WSMV Channel 4 did the 615 podcast with me. She previously covering sports in the Winston-Salem area, did a ton of Cedric Gray's games, thinks a lot of him as a mature, beyond, a rookie, as a leader, basically. That it wouldn't be too much for him in his rookie season to handle the kind of role that currently has a vacancy at it. But I do think that Gibbons is going to be who they start with, and Titans fans will probably hem and haw about that because they associate Jack Gibbons with bad roster, right? In the same way that NWI kind of gets hit with that. Like, hasn't that felt like the same kind of tenor or tone the Titans fans have taken with players like Jack Gibbons, even though he played, I won't call it good, but he played solid football for you at a stretch where you had very few players playing solid football for you. So I don't want to immediately discount Jack Gibbons just because I associate him with being a weaker part of a weak roster.
There's nobody else that we could consider really factoring into that battle beyond Gibbons and Gray.
I'm going to go to Reese Jack Gifford is. Wasn't that the way that they were pitching guys like that last year to us? What was the Nielsen
Luke Gifford? Luke Gifford is the name.
Luke Gifford.
He's still around, too. He was the special teams ace acquired by the Cowboys.
Yeah. Special teams, he kept getting hurt every time he made a special teams tackle last year. I feel like Gifford spent a good portion of the year missing time. I would have to go back and look at his snap counts, his game logs. But, yeah, I really don't. At least right now, nobody differentiated themselves in the offseason program again, in the same way that we're talking about offensive linemen haven't put pads on yet, neither have linebackers and defensive linemen. So, it could be very possible that somebody distinguishes themselves, takes advantage of the opportunity at the padded practices that we have not yet seen beyond, speed and space type stuff.
Well, because my next question could involve Cedric Gray, and it was which rookie on the defensive side gets us talking about on-field performance.
It damn sure better be Sweat.
Sure. But if it's not, we will be talking about Sweat more than any of these others. But I'm talking about on-field performance because of what they're doing on the practice field in joint practice and in preseason games. Who between Cedric Gray, Jarvis Brownlee, Jalen Harrell, James Williams, and Tavondre Sweat will we be talking about the most throughout the course of training camp?
If it's Brownlee, something happened to Roger McCreary because that should. Why? Because he's a nickel.
Yeah, but he's still going to get work in. We could still be talking about Brownlee. Sure. Without anything having happened to Roger McCreary.
But let's say percentage of snaps, like who's going to play more. Roger McCreary is going to be out there a great deal more of the time. Now, nickel dime, they can throw him out there in a couple of different roles.
In a preseason game, I would imagine we see Brownlee a lot more. I'm talking about throughout the course of training camp. Yes,
okay.
Specifically for the next few weeks, the next month or so.
I just think for reasons that are not just physical size, like metaphorically, Tavondre Sweat takes up so much room in this discussion because Sebastian Joseph Day is a solid, league average starter who has displayed good leadership skills, who has been a team captain. I don't want every argument or every discussion around the defensive line to sound like I'm denigrating Sebastian Joseph Day, because I think he's a solid player. But I need somebody else on this defense to be better than solid. I need difference makers if I'm a Titans fan, if I'm looking for a more competitive football team, because sure, score 27 points per game if you're capable, but don't give up 26 and a half in the way, or 28 doing it, right? That's kind of my fear with this defense.
Well, and that's the thing with Jack Gibbons, right? Is he a difference maker at middle linebacker? You trust him to be in the right spots to play sound football, and he even said that about a challenge to himself is making more plays in the margins, being more of a playmaker at middle linebacker. It feels like it kind of carries over there. With Sebastian Joseph Day, at this point, had a successful NFL career, but will he be a difference maker if he has to be for T'Vondre Sweat? Because that could be the case. You may need a situation in which Joseph Day has to be a difference maker.
So Sweat, Gray, Brownlee, Harrell, those are the four names that you mentioned?
The rookies?
Yeah.
Gray, Brownlee, Harrell, James Williams.
James Williams.
That's who you're missing.
James Williams, I mean, depending on what the special team situation looks like, again, I go back to the Jamal Adams discussion. Jamal Adams doesn't have to make the roster if James Williams or Otis Reese or somebody who's in the similar vein without the draft pedigree and name brand equity that Jamal Adams, he doesn't have to make the roster if those two are good enough special teams players and can play nickelbacker roles or situational edge rushers, because James Williams is a giant human being. He's a giant of a safety before they converted him to linebacker here. And I am curious about him. That seems like a good candidate for training camp preseason discussion, because he's going to be out there smacking dudes on special teams. He's going to be out there playing hard-nosed defense. The question is, how disciplined is he? How in control of the position, or how much of the positional nuances has he mastered in a very short amount of time? Because they're expected to hit the ground running come training camp, but still, it's different once training camp gets here as a rookie. Those are the questions on defense that we have. AFC quarterbacks under the most amount of pressure. A contributor for this radio station, as a matter of fact, put out a top 5 list of AFC quarterbacks under the most pressure, and we'll tell you where Will Levis lands. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken, 615-737-1045. The number, speaking of heat, how many quarterbacks got the heat turned up on them heading into 2024? So, Jordan Dejani of CBS Sports, who I know visits with Blaine, is that weekly?
Every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday.
That's my guy.
Okay, so he put a list out last week that we did not see, but one of our P1 type of listeners, Darrington, DM'd it to me on Instagram and said, worth your discussion at some point. It's 5 AFC quarterbacks under the most pressure in 2024 NFL season. You want to take a crack at the list? Do you have the list?
I have it, but I have not read it because I figured you might want to do this.
Okay, so guess the top 5.
Oh, in any order?
In any order. Well, I mean, I think you should rank them.
Because we are talking about it, I will say Levis.
He's there.
He's on
He's
there.
somewhere. I'll tell you in a second.
If I think of mine in the AFC, I think I'm putting Deshaun Watson number 1. I don't. Is he on the list?
He's on the list.
Okay. Is he number 1?
He's not number 1.
He's not number 1.
No.
If not Deshaun Watson number 1, because I think about a Super Bowl contending roster where everything hinges on the $240 million man, that's interesting that he's not number 1 to me, because I'd also put maybe Tua on this list.
He's also on this list.
But not number 1.
He's not number 1.
Is Justin Herbert on this list?
Justin Herbert is not on this list. He damn should be. I'm tired of hearing about Justin Herbert for as much money as he makes to not do anything.
And Russell Wilson should definitely be on this list.
Russell Wilson is on this list.
How many have I named?
4 or 5.
4 out of 5. Just tell me the 5th.
Aaron Rodgers. That felt like a layup.
Yeah.
So, from least pressure to most of the top 5 AFC quarterbacks under the most pressure this offseason, he lists Levis as number 5. One of the most fascinating quarterbacks to keep tabs on this season. Levis had a legendary NFL debut in Week 8 when he sparked the Titans' offense in a big way, 238 yards, 4 passing touchdowns, 0 interceptions against the Atlanta Falcons. Do you think it makes it more legendary because he did it in the Oilers uniforms? I feel like that heightens the stakes for things, that he came out swinging that way, right? Anyway.
Oh, sure. Definitely adds to the mystique.
So, mentions Levis as number 5 because the counting stats are terrible, but there is reason for optimism if you paid close enough attention to Levis last year. Plenty of people didn't because the Titans were terrible. You didn't have to pay attention to Levis down the stretch if you weren't covering the team every day, caring about the team every day, talking about the team every day, the way that we do. Levis 5, Rodgers 4. I probably would have put him number 1, if not Watson, on this list. Watson 3, which is low to me. Tua 2, he still hasn't gotten paid, so I get that. Russell Wilson number 1 with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He admits in his blurb here, it sounds dramatic, but it feels like Mr. Unlimited's legacy is on the line entering 2024, to which I might say, I believe the legacy is already kind of off to the side, isn't it?
Look, if he comes out and plays really well this season.
What's really well? Because he played well enough last year and he got benched. At the first opportunity, he got benched.
It's arguably the most interesting quarterback dynamic in the NFL with Justin Fields just kind of sitting there.
I'll grant you that.
Right? It's not a quarterback battle like we could have with Minshew and O'Connell, but is that really, are we all really pining for Minshew-O'Connell quarterback battle updates?
I barely remember the names of the Vegas Raiders quarterbacks at this point.
Which you sent something the other day that Devontae Adams kind of indicated that O'Connell, it's his job to lose.
Yeah, sounds like it.
But this is the most interesting dynamic. I would put Watson number 1, though.
Watson is 100% number 1. Yeah. 100%.
With how he's played, the price tag and what's around him. Yeah.
No, I would keep Levis last, but I would put Watson first. I'll put Tua second because Tua has not yet been paid, and I know that's been a big point of contention. He's the only quarterback in the first round of that draft class to not get his second deal yet, and statistically, he's been the most productive of any of them. So,
and I think Trevor Lawrence, you could argue, should be on this list.
Herbert should be on this list before Russell Wilson. I just don't. Russell Wilson is an afterthought to me. Now, I'm doing the thing that people perpetually do to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Pittsburgh Steelers mess around, win 9 or 10 games, and make everybody eat it because then they're in the playoffs again. But, like, Justin Herbert hadn't done a damn thing in the NFL other than be super talented, have a couple of moments where you think, okay, this should be one of the best quarterbacks in football, and then they lose a big game to the Chiefs in a big spot where they can potentially establish themselves. You know what I love?
But more than that, he's thrown for 5,000 yards in a season as a second-year pro. Like that is a significant thing.
So that just immediately takes the pressure off you? Oh, okay.
No, I'm not. I'm just, beyond, besides be very talented and have a couple of moments, like he has put together some really impressive seasons.
For what?
Sure, absolutely. The Chargers have appeared in one playoff game, and they blew a 27-0 lead, whatever it was, against Jacksonville in it. I'm not arguing with you that there is not pressure there. There is, and he doesn't exactly have a murderer's row of wide receivers to throw to this season.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
The problem is the best teams are behind them now, and now they're having to account for his damn contract, which is why he should be on this list, Lucas.
Sure, I'm not disagreeing with you.
I just
Herbert
think it's such a pass.
Sure, I'm not disagreeing with you that he is under a ton of pressure, but I think there's more to it than what has he done besides be super talented and have a couple nice moments.
That's about the extent of his career to me, and I think there's also some of it to being the second team in LA. The Chargers aren't hyper scrutinized, and they will be more scrutinized now that Jim Harbaugh is there and Herbert is paid what he's paid.
How many NFL records do you think Justin Herbert owns?
Well, he held a lot of them that CJ Stroud just broke. I will say that Justin Herbert holds 3 NFL records.
Justin Herbert holds 13 NFL records. Most passing touchdowns by a rookie QB had 31.
Okay.
CJ had, 24? Something like that. Most total touchdowns by a rookie quarterback. Most 300-yard passing games by a rookie quarterback, beyond just the rookie ones.
Did he break Cam's records on some of these?
Surely. Yeah, Cam had a ton of those.
Which is impressive.
Most consecutive seasons of 4,000 passing yards to begin a career.
That means
3.
they're chasing. I don't care about that.
Absolutely.
Blake Bortles has a bunch
and
of
some of these are that.
games.
Most pass attempts per game.
Yeah.
Most pass completions per game.
Okay.
Most passing yards in a quarterback's first 3 NFL seasons.
Some nice moments.
If I'm not mistaken, he broke Dan Marino's record for most yards in the first 3 years of a career. So there's a lot more to just talent and a couple moments to what Justin Herbert has done. But I'm with you. He's under a lot of pressure going into this year.
But I would also agree with you that Trevor Lawrence probably deserves a spot. Both of them, I think, should be under more pressure. Russell Wilson is a more famous player with legacy on the line to an extent because, is Russell a surefire Hall of Famer anymore? I think a lot of people would have said at the time that he was traded to the Broncos that he was on track to be a Pro Football Hall of Famer. I think that's very much in dispute now.
It's also about what can you accomplish with the team that you're on. Like, what is the best case scenario for Russ and the Steelers compared to the best case scenario for Deshaun Watson and the Browns?
Best case scenario.
Very different.
Wild card again, wild card and losing in the wild card round.
And for Deshaun, it's Super Bowl.
They should, yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
So that should add to the pressure when the best case scenario is that much higher in terms of what you can accomplish,
again,
largely due to what's around you.
You get no argument from me on those two particular players. I'm advocating for Lamar Jackson not being on this list is wild to me. This whole we don't have enough time to play
everybody,
it here.
we can put every quarterback's under pressure going into
but Lamar
2024.
Jackson, to have it, the problem is everybody who's not named Mahomes in the AFC is under pressure because he can't be beat. He can, but it's been Joe Burrow one time, and even that feels like, they were touting Joe Burrow's record against Patrick Mahomes, and then what did Joe Burrow do against Patrick Mahomes this year? He lost. So I think that there is this heightened level of pressure on the AFC in general to up the ante every year, to have a Lamar Jackson, a Joe Burrow, at some point in his career, to Deshaun Watson, at least what they thought they were getting in Deshaun Watson, to compete at this level, which is why Titans fans are so, and should be, tied up in Will Levis because they need something. They've been walking into a gunfight with a knife the past couple of years, and they're trying to up the ante here.
By the way, there's a lot of pressure on Anthony Richardson to show he can be on the field for an entire NFL season.
I hate that it is, well, we'll talk about this because we're going to do divisional picks and all that kind of stuff once the season gets closer, but I don't know. Colts are interesting. So, Will Levis, a talking point. What did his former college coach have to say on 3HL at SEC Media Days about Will Levis? We'll let you hear from Mark Stoops coming up next.
It is 12:01. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. It is Titans training camp week. Players report to Ascension St. Thomas Sports Park. Tomorrow, Brian Callahan will open things up with an introductory press conference beginning tomorrow at 12:15, which you will be able to hear live right here on The Zone. In NFL news, the Green Bay Packers and Jordan Love might be close to an agreement on a contract extension, but until then, the starting quarterback will not participate in practice or games this preseason. Also, in Houston, the Texans have signed free agent running back Cam Akers, who was last with the Vikings before tearing his Achilles in Week 9 of 2023. This morning, Nashville Soccer Club officially announced the signing of Australian midfielder Patrick Yazbek. The 22-year-old has been playing in Norway since last year. New manager BJ Callahan officially takes over the club today with an introductory presser coming up on Friday. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour is upon us. Rocking and rolling our way through on this Monday, 615-737-1045. That's the number. Jump in there if you want. The F&M Bank chat also available to you. Football season right around the corner. Titans report to training camp officially today. I'm seeing Jimmy Wyatt tweet out preliminary thirst traps of fields freshly painted out there at Ascension St. Thomas Sports Park. I'm not sure. So I know that there are 3 opportunities that fans could have claimed a training camp ticket. Like, it's not like a lottery, but basically like, hey, first come, first serve. And I don't have the dates in front of me. I haven't seen all of the open training camp dates that you guys are going to be able to come out and hang out with us and see the players, get autographs, all those kind of things. Of course, the Nissan Stadium practice is also this Saturday, so I'm sure we'll see a great many of you out there as well. Looking forward to it. While we do this, of course, what Titans fans are going to be watching most whenever they get the opportunity to go to training camps, your preseason game, watch a regular season game, what have you, is Will Levis. A lot of talk about Will Levis. It starts and ends with the second-year quarterback out of Kentucky who is the undisputed starter of this franchise for the first time. Mark Stoops, his former head coach at Kentucky, is somebody I feel like we haven't heard a ton from Mark Stoops since Levis was drafted. Did he do 3HL at some point between SEC Media, this most recent appearance and when Levis was drafted? I don't remember having quotes necessarily.
On Levis specifically?
Yeah, on Levis specifically.
Yeah, maybe here or there.
Okay.
He's been asked about him off and on. But
Either
no,
way.
we've heard more from Liam Cohen.
Correct.
Because he's who worked with Levis on all the game planning aspects of how they were running that offense.
But I do value the head coach of Kentucky's opinion on his former quarterback and the ebbs and flows that they saw during Levis's time there. This was Mark Stoops speaking with 3HL at last week's SEC Media Days.
Well, again, that year kind of all came together. You know, you bring in Liam from the NFL, you bring in Will, who really was kind of a running quarterback at Penn State, wasn't utilized very much. And, but what we did see is we saw that arm that you guys see, and we see the competitor that he is. And so, that was really kind of a magical year. And, Will came in and just played the way he plays, played so hard. He's going to get tough yards when he has to. I know that's a concern in the NFL with all the games, the money you put into it. But, in college ball, we have to do that, right?
Yeah.
And so
in the SEC especially.
But Will is just, he is just an unbelievable competitor. I think you all know that and see that. If you don't see that by the way he plays, then you're not a football person. But he's a great human being. He cares about his teammates. He's never going to be a guy that gets caught up in all that. He wants to win. He wants to compete. He's ultra talented and competitive, and he's only going to get better. So I love watching him.
Mark Stoops, head coach of the Kentucky Wildcats, speaking last week at SEC Media Days in an interview with 3HL. You can check out the entirety of the interview in their podcast feed. So, as we mentioned in the last segment, basically every AFC quarterback is under pressure to perform this year because Patrick Mahomes is sitting at the top, king of the castle, favored for a third straight Super Bowl, the first franchise, I think, in the Super Bowl area to be favored as a betting favorite in the preseason in 3 straight Super Bowls. And they figure to be better this year than they were last year, or at least less clunky as an offense because they've ironed out some issues in their wide receiver core. So Levis, falling in line with this, he's having to learn a new offense. He's been an incredibly busy human being. When you think about all the different places, how many different places this offseason, from the end of his rookie season until basically mandatory minicamp or the OTA program, have we seen Will Levis? He's playing in the Live Golf Pro-Am with Phil Mickelson. He's playing in celebrity poker tournaments at the Super Bowl in Vegas.
Saw him at the Masters doing an interview with Laura Rutledge.
He's doing Special Olympics events. I know he's trying to get more involved. Derrick Henry left a pretty big void as far as community service type of stuff that Will Levis, it seems like, has an interest in filling. So I know
Jeff does a ton of that stuff as well.
Joe, there are many players that do, but Derrick is a pretty impactful figure that way.
Jeff was the nominee for Walter Payton last year.
He was a nominee.
Right?
He did not win. So Levis just doing a lot on top of
an off-season program for the first time in his career.
Learning another offense. This is a fifth consecutive off-season program that Levis will, if not learning an outright new offense, be working with a different offensive play caller, right? Going back to his time at Penn State, where he had 2, then at Kentucky, where he had 2, then last year Tim Kelly, now this year Brian Callahan, Nick Holtz. So this has been constant moving of goalposts for Will Levis on top of everything else that he's doing, because he has the personality, he has the skill set to elevate this franchise, not just on the field, but off it. We talk about, you don't have to have face of the franchise type of conversations just yet. He has to earn something on the football field more before you can legitimately lean into that. But you're looking for a new face of the Tennessee Titans without Mike Vrabel or Derrick Henry hovering over everything. And Levis has the opportunity to be that guy, should he be able to put all this stuff together. So I'm fascinated to see the way that he handles it, the way that he compartmentalizes, because we have not really talked about that. The vibes are good in the offseason, right? Nobody's won a game. Nobody's lost a game. Nobody's, to date, lost players. Actually, no, the Ryan Ramczyk thing. Didn't they shut Ryan Ramczyk down for the year?
He's out for the year.
So there have been players who've been shut down for the year already, which that's just so undercutting to New Orleans. Anyway, the amount of hyper-intense feelings that will be sent the head coach's way as not just the head coach, but as the offensive play caller.
What do you mean?
You are going to have, it's almost doubled, right? Mike Vrabel received scrutiny criticism as a head coach. Tim Kelly and Todd Downing received an entirely different level of scrutiny because they were the underperforming offensive play callers of an underperforming offense.
You're saying Callahan gets both.
Callahan gets both.
Yeah.
And on top of that, because, Lucas, we're talking about Will Levis end-all be-all this year, what is Brian Callahan's resume filled with? Matt Stafford, Peyton Manning, Derek Carr, Joe Burrow. Okay, you have set the bar pretty damn high. And he doesn't have to be all of those players in year 2, or he doesn't have to look like all of those players did in whatever phase of their career Callahan had them in, because they're different at different stages. But you're going to how many people wanted Arthur Smith fired till basically after that Carolina game? Once the tide started to turn, people were on Todd Downing's neck, understandably so, for 2 straight seasons. 2 straight seasons. And then the Tim Kelly situation left people with pretty bad vibes because of everything that was happening there. Brian Callahan's going to have all of that right out of the gate. Now, has anybody been more prepared with a background, at least, and with somebody like a father like Bill Callahan, who's been an NFL head coach, who's been a college football head coach, who's been an offensive play caller, who's been everything that Brian has been except for a quarterback's coach in this situation? They have that kind of experience to buffer it on the roster, but I'm just so fascinated to see the way that that Titans fans handle their relationship with an offensive play calling head coach who's directly hinged to quarterback development, however this goes with Levis. and how Levis deals with all of that at the same time. It's really a lot.
I mean, how much will be on Levis in those moments, though? Like, if the Titans' offensive line is much improved, and by proxy, the run game, and the wide receiver core is staying healthy, and DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley are doing DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley things, and it all comes down to the quarterback play and how consistent it is. If it's not, who gets more of the blame there?
Callahan.
Will Levis or Brian Callahan?
Why isn't he better? You're the quarterback guy. I was told this offseason that you checked every box in hiring the quarterback guy, right? Getting an offensive system that's not centered around a 250-pound running back. Like, why isn't he better? You're the quarterback guy. 100% he's going to get hit over the head with that at some point during his tenure here. It doesn't have to be, the first game. It doesn't have to be the midpoint of the season. But at some point, that dialogue is going to be had. And I'm just curious to see how he handles it, how they both handle it. Because they're both going to have to, they're both going to say, I'm responsible for this. And in reality, I think that conversation for the fans would pivot very much towards the head coach first. 615-737-1045. You want to talk some college football?
I would love that.
Chris Doering, our buddy from the SEC Network. Is that a fine?
Jackson's like, I'll allow it.
I'll allow it.
He's coming up next. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. All anybody can talk about on the show is how hungry we are. And so if you are hungry like we are and your lunch hour is also right now, make sure you check out the fine folks at Hattie B's. You can get a free dessert if you use the mobile delivery app for the first time. In fact, once you sign up in the app, you get a free dessert on your birthday. I got a free Hattie B's peach cobbler with my tenders meal, yesterday. Courtesy of Hattie B's. So we appreciate that. Always a good option for you. Speaking of options, before Chris Doering of the SEC Network joins us, so Untold is a Netflix series, documentary series, sports documentary series. It's Netflix's version of 30 for 30. And the most famous of these is the Manti Te'o one to date.
What about the Florida one? Swamp Kings.
Never saw it.
That one created a lot of buzz for what they didn't cover.
Right.
Lame.
Which is, as soon as you told me that, or as soon as somebody told me that they didn't cover the stuff that I actually care
Very
about.
briefly. They went into that stuff very briefly. It was a side note.
That's the whole story. It's like Urban Meyer, champion for all time, is not something that I care about. I want to know about the murder in the huddle. Anyway, I am interested, though, for reasons that are not just personal, but local. They're doing a murder of Air McNair, Untold, that's going to debut in August, right around the Titans' second or third preseason game. August 20th, Untold, this is at Netflix on Twitter, Untold is back with 3 new sports stories that go well beyond the headlines. The murder of Air McNair, capturing the Titans' 2000 Super Bowl run, and unanswered questions surrounding McNair's 2009 murder. Why was that so hard for me? Sign Stealer on August 27th, the story of Connor Stalions sharing his side of Michigan's alleged sign-stealing scheme that turned him into a viral villain. I add parenthetically, if you're going to be a viral villain, at least get paid. And then thirdly, Hope Solo versus U.S. Soccer on September the 3rd. Solo unpacks 2 decades of glory and scandal that accompanied her rise to a level of fame that transcended her sport. Which of the 3 is most interesting there? Because immediately I gravitate to the Connor Stalions one. I've heard the McNair thing done. We're obviously going to pay attention to it for local and personal reasons for many of you to see if there's anything new to be learned there, because I feel like there have been investigative podcast series done on McNair. There have been television, there have been cold case stuff done on McNair.
Oh, yeah.
And that 15th anniversary, I believe, was this past July 4th on the tragic murder-suicide situation. So I'm curious about McNair to see if there's anything actually new to be learned there that we don't know on a local level that Jimmy Wyatt didn't already uncover. But Sign Stealer is the one for me. I'm so in on the Connor Stalions one. I want to know what he looks like. I want to hear him talk. I want to just kind of see if he seems as crazy as all of that. Basically, the Michigan Manifesto. I want to see if he's an insane person and if they're going to put that insane person on camera for an extended period of time.
How they cover the McNair case will be fascinating, and capturing the Titans Super Bowl run as a part of it. But
yeah, when's the last time the Titans have been nationally featured that way on anything save McNair?
In the Ravens, the documentary about the Ravens Super Bowl run, Titans were heavily featured in that one just because of
the games,
what that matchup was at the time. But yeah, in terms of actually about the Titans, this one will be the first one since, I don't know, is there a high-profile documentary or documentary series with the Titans as a central figure or a Titans player?
Not unless they did one specifically on the Music City Miracle, right? I mean, I'm sure Music City Miracle is a part of
a lot of features.
Many of those, like on the greatest moments in the history of the NFL or the greatest single plays in NFL history, or, you know, all those different things that NFL Network, I think, runs during like summertime and daytime programming. Like Music City Miracle has been featured in that a million times over because it's one of the most famous moments in the history of the sport.
Jackson saying NFL Network made a football life about McNair and Eddie George.
Together?
So two separate.
Oh, okay. I was going to say they didn't even even separate the two of them?
No.
Okay. I've never seen it. I don't think I've seen either of those. I might have seen a part of the Eddie George one. It's been a while though. But nothing on the scale of that, where it's these things were in parts, right? Manti Te'o was like 2 or 3 parts.
Yeah, it's just a few episodes.
So hopefully they're not doing a 9-part Tom Brady like man in the arena type thing on the Steve McNair murder-suicide, because that would be unpleasant.
Have you been watching any of the wide receiver series?
I actually did for the first time. I was watching it. Do you want to find me for this? I was watching it in the sauna yesterday. Thank you. Because somebody had left their Netflix login on the sauna, and so I just happened to see that they were halfway through the receiver episode. So I grifted off their Netflix in the sauna, and I watched the first episode, most of the first episode of Receiver. It kept me engaged. For sure kept me engaged. I find myself gravitating towards George Kittle because he's an insane person. Obviously a local figure, because he lives in Nashville. He's a Preds fan. He's a huge Roman Josi, Phil Forsberg guy, right? He's out there publicly advocating for Nashville sports that aren't, the Titans, I think, on a regular basis. I know he's got a lot of relationships with Titans players. But yeah, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Deebo Samuel, and George Kittle featured heavily in the first episode of Receiver. I think Kittle is the most intriguing one to me. I think so at this point. Have you?
I have not.
You are really taking this football agnostic before training camp approach.
No, it's not that. It's not that. I am just so deep in my Sopranos rewatch at the moment that any moment I get in front of a TV is to continue watching Sopranos. I'm so invested in a show I watched 5 years ago.
There's nothing wrong with that.
I think I'm going to be in for a Sopranos rewatch every 5 years. I think there'll be a cycle, and then I'll add Many Saints of Newark at the end of the rewatch.
Was that any good? I didn't see it.
It was okay. It was solid.
Blair Flat says, I missed something. Are we getting a documentary? No, but McNair is. So yes, the Titans are, by extension of that, getting a McNair documentary that is also going to include the run, like why Steve McNair became famous, and then the fall afterwards, which is the appropriate way to set that up. And I'm sure Titans fans will be invested. I'd be curious, did we ever talk to Chris about the Swamp Kings documentary?
No, I don't think we did. No. And then the Johnny Manziel one came out shortly thereafter, which was good. That was good.
I never saw the Manziel
And they covered everything you would want them to cover. I thought. People still found a way to complain about it, but I thought they covered everything you possibly could at that time.
Well, for as hard as you hit me with stop complaining about these things, they're just entertainment. I almost kept myself from watching a lot of these ones because the Te'o one was so good, set my expectations so high that I almost felt like any of the other ones after that would leave me wanting or leave me disappointed. So I kind of avoided the rest of the Untold documentaries just because of how high the bar was, I think, off that Manti Te'o one. And also, we'd heard from Johnny Manziel. We've heard from Urban Meyer. The fact that they got that moment with Manti Te'o is absolutely crazy to me. So looking forward to seeing what Netflix is able to generate with the Steve McNair documentary. All right, Chris Doering of the SEC Network has just joined us on 104.5 The Zone. Always good to see our buddy Chris. Thanks for hopping on. Netflix just put this out that they're doing a bunch of new Untolds on sports documentaries on the murder of Aaron McNair, Sign Stealer on Connor Stallions, your boy with the Michigan Manifesto, and Hope Solo versus U.S. Soccer. Chris, which of those intrigues you the most?
Oh, man, I would say I think the Sign Stealer. I think the Sign Stealer being so recent and part of the controversy surrounding a national championship last year, I'm amazed that they've gotten that out so quick. But I guess that's part of the point is the more timely that you can produce it, the more interest you're going to have from the public.
How much money do you think they said, no, we want the rights to the Sign Stealer story out there with HBO and Apple TV? Like Netflix had to put a bag in front of this man.
And does Harbaugh make an appearance?
Yeah.
No way. No way.
Not a chance.
I can't. No, I don't think he's going to make that appearance. But I imagine it's a pretty good payday. And I hope. So Netflix is the one that does the Untolds. Is that right?
Yes.
Because I'll be honest. I was not all that, and I know it's a different production company, but I was a little disappointed with the Swamp Kings documentary that came out last summer, I guess. And it was supposed to be this big trailer about all the controversy that went off the field, and it seemed like more of a hype fluff piece, and that's coming from a Gator. So I hope that the rest. I think the Untolds do a little bit better justice of diving into the darker side of some of these stories, though.
Well, I was just getting ready to ask you about Swamp Kings, Chris, because I also had that feedback given to me enough where I was like, well, respectfully, I don't care about that part of it. We all know about how successful Florida was on the football field. Like, I want more details on everything that was going on around Urban Meyer and Tim Tebow and Aaron Hernandez and everything else, that it didn't really feel like that came through. So to hear that feedback from you as well, I'm sure that I know a lot of people held that sentiment, even though I didn't get the chance to see it myself.
Yeah, I mean, it was great as a former Gator. You know, I love that team. I love that era. I love the 2 national championships that group brought. But at the same time, it was being promoted as, hey, this is a great team. But, you know, look at all the arrests, look at the Aaron Hernandez stuff. And it really didn't dive into that too much. So it was I think the timeliness of it before the season had a lot of people excited about the Florida football season. Unfortunately, 2023 was a year to forget. And I think most Florida fans are hoping it gets a little bit better here in 2024.
Yes, absolutely. I know that's probably a big part of the dialogue around SEC Network, or rather SEC Media Days. Of course, Chris does the show for SEC Network as well. You can hear him on SiriusXM as a part of their expansive coverage. So the vibes around Florida at SEC Media Days, Chris, I guess we'll start there before we talk about preseason voting on the polls and things like that. What was the general tenor from your experience?
You know what? The vibes were almost non-existent, really. I think it's funny because the talk was largely about Texas. Obviously, Texas and Oklahoma come into the league, but more focused on Texas than Oklahoma, in my opinion. The talk was about Ole Miss and could they break into the 12-team playoff field. The talk was about Alabama and how they move on from the greatest of all time and Nick Saban. But I felt like there was a couple teams that really didn't get talked about much. Auburn was one. Kentucky seemed like another. And Florida was right there. And Florida is a blue blood in the Southeastern Conference. So for them to not make ripples, I would say that, you know, that they were there. They were probably third or even fourth in importance of that particular day, which feels kind of weird as a Florida guy that lived through some of the heyday. So one of the biggest, most disrespectful things, I think I did it as well. When you're looking at other teams' schedules and you're trying to, you know, look at potential pitfalls, rarely was any opponent of Florida's talking about the Gators tripping them up. You know, we talk about Georgia's schedule being so incredibly difficult, having to go to Ole Miss, having to go to Texas, you know, having to go to Alabama, having to play Tennessee at home, but nobody mentions the cocktail party. And I think that's a reflection of kind of how irrelevant Florida has been with, you know, no winning seasons the last 3 years.
Chris, it's an interesting situation because it does feel like there is a belief in what Billy Napier is doing, and getting a 5-star quarterback in the building helps, but yet still the murderer's row coming up. What does Florida have to do this year? How many games do you feel Billy Napier has to win in order to still feel good about what this program can be under him going on into 2025 and not let it bottom out too much to where you almost have to make a change?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at teams, at programs, at coaches that are kind of under the hot seat right now, on the hot seat, Arkansas seems like one. You know, they've got to make a significant improvement this year. People are talking about South Carolina. I don't know if I agree with that or not, but I think Florida and Billy Napier would be, you know, near that same discussion. I don't think anything happens this year short of a disaster. I think Coach Napier's done a nice job of improving the talent on the roster right now and doing a good job of creating a more positive culture, getting good guys in that locker room. That was kind of the focus of the transfer portal, was trying to get experienced 4th, 5th, 6-year guys that have played a lot of football, that are good locker room guys. You know, they've done well with some of the recent recruiting. But I honestly believe that it's not about a number of wins this year for Billy Napier. It's more about the aesthetics. It's got to look better and more organized than it did last year. Starting at game one, all the penalties, the 2 number 3s on punt return was a disaster. You know, the 2-minute situation late in the game against Arkansas was a disaster. Some of the undisciplined penalties, you know, including the spitting penalty in Florida State when you're about to get off the field. Like, not only were there mistakes being made by a team that can't afford to shoot themselves in the foot, but they were the most untimely penalties and mistakes that were being made. So they've got to be better They've changed a lot of the leadership on the defensive side. Ron Roberts comes in to kind of help oversee the defense with Austin Armstrong. You make changes in the secondary and on the defensive line in terms of coaching those positions. So I do think that this is a team that has to look a little bit more organized. They've got to look more competitive. They need to finish ball games in the fourth quarter. I think that's kind of what you go back and look at the failure. There were a lot of close games that they just couldn't get over the hump. And I think that goes back to the fact that they had a lot of youth and very thin in terms of their depth. A lot of that youth, 25% of the defensive snaps were taken by true freshmen last year, which is a recipe for disaster in the SEC. But those guys are now sophomores and have experience under the belt. And then you add in the guys that they added in the transfer portal. I feel a lot better about Florida's talent right now.
It was interesting, Chris, after a week of media days and hearing from every head coach in the SEC, it felt like Nick Saban still was the most interesting person every time he talked on the SEC Network desk. Now a colleague of you guys. So who do you think has the best chance, I'll say, to step into that Don role, the Godfather type of role to fix college football that we'll look to for all the answers? Because I don't know about you, but it didn't feel like to me any head coach really tried to wrangle that role this year.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it was kind of surreal to see Coach Saban in the green room with us back there offset.
Well, we heard he couldn't get into the green room. He didn't have his credential.
Yeah. You gotta have your credential. Doesn't matter how great of a coach you are, And he respected that too, which I thought was pretty cool. But you had me going in the direction of one particular coach until you said, who's looking to kind of navigate the sport of football into the next generation. I think Kirby Smart is the Don of the league. I think he's the Don of college football in general. He's the gold standard, most recent success, doing a great job of retaining talent on his roster. But I don't know that he's taking the bigger picture stance yet. And that's not a knock on him. Yeah, he's still a lot younger than what Coach Saban was when he started to put himself in that position. I think he's more worried about his own team right now and winning championships himself while he has the opportunity. But, I do think it's a unique dynamic in the SEC. I think you go back 6 years, I believe, and only two coaches remain from that media day 6 years ago. That's Kirby Smart and Mark Stoops. And Mark Stoops, the longest tenured coach in the SEC, again, not even really being talked about with the team that he's put together this year in Lexington. So I think we were talking about this on our show this morning. I feel like Kirby Smart's a little bit of a bully with the rest of the coaches in the league. I don't know if you guys saw the picture of the coaches and some of the players on the bull that the SEC had set up, but there was a rumor that Coach Smart in the coach's text said, "Hey, don't let me see any of you guys on that bull." Like he was threatening this to flame them if they got in there. So you saw a lot of coaches abstaining from taking part in that.
Sheep, you got to be tougher than that. Somebody get on the bull. Chris Doering of the SEC Network hanging out here with us on 104.5 The Zone. So my annual question about why don't they drug test at SEC Media Days based on the voting for Vanderbilt getting 2 first-place finish votes in this thing. But the predicted order of finish for the SEC preseason media poll had Tennessee clocking in at 7th. That's below Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss, LSU, and Missouri. As Vols fans across our listening audience took many issues with that, what was your assessment of how the media voted on this year's SEC?
Well, first and foremost, I don't know that it's necessarily a slap in the face. I think you presume that the SEC is going to get 4 spots in the college football playoff field this year. I think there's probably 9 teams that are vying for those 4 spots, and certainly Tennessee's in the mix. I know Tennessee fans typically haven't liked me because of my Florida ties, but I'm big on the Vols this year. I got a chance to see them when I was up in Knoxville for Pro Day. That was the first spring scrimmage, and got a chance to see Nico Iamaleava with that added weight, with the ball coming out of his hands, with that talented group of receivers that they put around him, the improved defense. I think Tennessee's kind of my dark horse this year. Last year it was kind of Ole Miss and Missouri more so than anybody else, coming from the predicted 6th spot in the East all the way to 11 wins last year. But I do think that, Tennessee's got a chance to win 10 games. You win 10 games in the SEC, you're getting into that college football playoff field. So I would have them much higher than 7th. But I think, there's reason to be skeptical given the fact that Nico's only started one game, and the Tennessee offense took such a big step back last year after Hendon Hooker completed a fantastic 2-year run before that.
Follow him on Twitter at Chris Doering or CDoering28 on Instagram. You can watch him on the SEC Network. You can hear him on SEC This Morning on Sirius XM. He's always a great guest when he visits, and we appreciate your time as always, buddy. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you for having me, and I apologize for my tardiness. I hate to be running late on you guys, so thanks for your patience.
Listen to me, Chris. I'm late to my own radio show. The damn thing has my name on it, and I show up late. You're forgiven. It's okay. See,
10:01, Chris, every morning.
The talent. It's okay. You justify it with the talent. That's how Chris Doering does it. That's how I tell myself I'm doing it. Thanks, buddy. We'll talk to you soon.
Appreciate you guys. See ya.
I'll take that fine. I'm betting on me on that one. I'll take that fine.
What he said about Kirby Smart, he is 48, and Nick Saban, when he was 48, was wrapping up his time at Michigan State before he took the LSU job in 1999. Nick Saban's best season as a head coach at that time was a 9-2 campaign coaching Michigan State with a Florida Citrus Bowl win in the 1999 season. Kirby at that age, 2 national championships.
That is such important context, I think, for the discussion around Kirby Smart, because it's just been so long of Nick Saban dominating, and not just dominating, but dominating in the SEC. I mean, hell, you brought up in the college football trivia game his first Power 5 college football job, but I think a lot of people still go back to LSU and almost forget about the Michigan State part because it's been that long. Last call for phone calls if you got them. 615-737-1045. The number. Hey, I don't know whether, can I describe what we're going to play for people coming up next as a funny moment? Because I'm scared. I'm scared of it. We'll tell you what it is. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Summertime is here, and we're releasing a limited number of lake lots to the public. One day only. This Saturday, July 27th, you can experience resort lake living at a fraction of the price. 2-acre wooded estate lots with boat slips from just $79,900. You can reserve your townhome from only $20,000. Lake cottage packages with boat slips only $349,900. You can get private golf cart access to the new marina, 10 miles of walking trails, 3.5 miles of shoreline, and a brand new 25,000 square foot clubhouse. Summer waterfront concerts, and your boat is only a golf cart ride away. Play on the lake or simply relax at the waterfront restaurant just over 20 minutes from Knoxville, Tennessee, and a short drive to the Smoky Mountains. They have financing options available, so call to secure your private appointment. Times are limited, and you want to make sure that you capitalize on this limited property release Saturday, July 27th. Visit us at lakelivingtn.com. That's lakelivingtn.com, or better yet, give us a call, 865-408-9992. Memories start here. Last call for phone calls if you got them. 615-737-1045. That's the number. There's been precious little sports other than training camp starting to ramp back up. I know baseball starting to pick back up after the All-Star break, and Olympics not that far around the corner. I saw that Teresa Walker and the Walkers, separate cousins maybe, George Walker of the Tennessee and Teresa Walker of the Associated Press, they successfully made it to Paris, where their Olympic coverage will disseminate from. So looking forward to see everything that T writes and tweets and puts out from there. Are you a Summer Olympics or a Winter Olympics type of guy?
I've always preferred summer. Summer just has more, I don't know, I get more invested in swimming and in track and in soccer than I do pretty much any Winter Olympic sport other than, I don't know, what is the most?
Hockey.
Yeah, but
sledding is electric.
Hockey has lost its luster since the NHL's essentially pulled out. So summer all the way.
So Jackson, winter or summer?
Summer. The basketball is incredible. I love watching Olympic basketball. I think track is very interesting. And even though I do love some of the winter, like the bobsledding, the snowboarding, stuff like that is fun. But summer, definitely better.
Breakdancing is now a Summer Olympic sport.
Don't they call it breaking? It's not breakdancing, but it's like breaking. I'm down. Is it team? Is it individual? What does that look like? I'm all in.
No clue.
Quick note for us Lakers fans on this show. LeBron James will be the flag bearer for Team USA in the opening ceremony.
The right decision. No singular athlete alive in America embodies the values that we want this country to stand for, like LeBron James.
Jackson just got in my ear and said, "Oh dear God!"
Easy. The face of
sure, go ahead.
The greatest
Hitch yourself
franchise
to that political wagon as we approach another election cycle.
I'm gonna go ahead and clip that.
Then Lucas will receive the tweets about liberal twerp and you like China.
I'm just talking about sports.
No, see what you did there?
I'm just talking about the greatest organization in American history.
Oh no, what happened there? Lucas famously politically aligned with LeBron James.
Lake Show.
That sounded very much less confident. It sounded like trailing away from the microphone.
Lake Show? They had to escape South Sudan the other day.
I saw that.
1-point win. So we'll see what happens with Team USA.
The way that you just walked into that this is how I know that the world happens completely around Lucas and he just doesn't pay attention. That you walked blindly into that.
I really did. I didn't mean to.
Incredible. Polls, please, at your convenience. He's on the phone. Are you ready for the polls? No.
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. What is your biggest pre-camp question about the Titans offense? Just Morris on Twitter says, tight ends, depth, blocking ability, route running, pass catching abilities?
Yes, is the answer. All of the above. D, all of the above.
We have not talked a lot about the tight end position on this team.
They truly have not been, Wiley looks more like a professional athlete than he did last year. Like last year, he just came in here looking like a 6'7" string bean. But, that's not uncommon for a former wide receiver turned tight end, now turned pro athlete. Chig, I think I've made my position clear on it. Chig Okonkwo needs to distinguish himself as a tight end one instead of people, I think, just kind of assuming that it's going to be Chig, because I think it should be Chig, but it's closer than people probably realize.
Paul's question is, how is the O-line coming along? Kevin says, until proven otherwise, the O-line will always be the biggest question. Eric's is, can Levis be consistent and accurate, a.k.a. more like a quarterback Callahan succeeds with? Another one, target share between Hopkins and Ridley and what that looks like throughout the course of training camp will be interesting.
Somebody just said in the YouTube chat, remember when the YouTube feed got the poll intros? Pepperidge Farm remembers. That made me laugh.
Jackson has banned the live stream from the poll intros.
What do you have against the YouTube people? You oftentimes don't let them hear the audio.
It's copyright stuff.
Yeah, it's copyright.
What is
Rhett's terrible Batman impression is copyrighted?
Using the theme from The Dark Knight. What is your biggest pre-camp question about the Titans defense? Just Morris is back in the replies. Inside linebacker, enough speed, enough depth. What's happening?
Didn't you tell me to give it a second?
Why did everybody just stop talking?
It can't play.
Okay,
because
good
the
job
poll
by
music
everybody.
is under it.
Oh
I was gonna play
my
Lucas's
God.
Mickey Mouse impression.
Wow, everybody just nailed that. Fair or foul, the Vols should feel disrespected by finishing 7th in the preseason SEC poll. 65% say it's fair. Jimmy replies, he says, I bleed orange, but the Vols have to prove they are better than Missouri, Ole Miss, and LSU. He says the ranking seems fair at this point.
You are so lucky I have 10 seconds left. Otherwise, I would rip you up and down for the remainder of this segment.
Oh, sure you would. Which AFC quarterback is under the most pressure in 2024? Kenneth says Will Levis. His NFL starting career likely depends on this season. Karen says she keeps going back to Aaron Rodgers. Goody says if Josh Allen loses to Mahomes again in the playoffs, it might break Buffalo. And Paul says it's got to be Deshaun Watson.
Are those the polls?
Those are the polls.
What do you have to say for yourself?
Sorry.
It's okay, Jackson.
I don't think so.
You don't have to explain yourself to anybody.
You literally just made him explain himself to you.
Those are the polls.
That's the show.
Shut up. Just end it. I'm done. I'll talk to you tonight on primetime. I'm sick of these two.
B-Hop and Hunk next.